Hi, um, so my name's Jasmine, and I'm choosing to talk about pregnancy and the culture of what it's like being a pregnant woman in Ukraine. Um, so I got this idea. I spent 3 week terms twice in Ukraine over 2 summers. Um, in my church, we partnered with another small church there, and so we would send teams about every 3 months for 4 years. Um, so I wasn't there all the time, but I did get to spend some larger chunks amount of time in Ukraine in high school. And my family has certainly kept a lot of relationships from some of those people. Um, so I consider them my Ukrainian brothers and sisters. And one of our translators, his name is Sasha, his wife, so he's from Ukraine, but his wife is American, but grew up in Russia as a missionary kid. So that's kind of how they met. Their paths crossed while she was in high school. And now they're married, and they have 3 beautiful little girls. They're all wonderful. But her name's Regina, and Regina, she actually works as a midwife, OBGYN, those kinds of things in Ukraine, whatever the Ukrainian version of that is. But the reason is because the childbirth process and the organizations there, like birthing houses, are super duper corrupt. I've heard plenty of stories from her, but I also thought I would go ahead and do some more research just to get a more academic understanding of what it's like to be pregnant in Ukraine. So first of all, just as a country, Ukraine is really corrupt. The government, there's just no sense of justice or fairness. So, even if you have all your paperwork, you have, you're still a student in Ukraine, you go to school there, and you just want to get your card to come to America. I have a friend, her name's Elena. She wanted to come visit us. But what they often do is they make you pay a bunch of money, and then they reject you. So this way you have to pay twice. You can redo it, but it's so expensive that if you can't afford it twice, then you don't get the paperwork. And I tell that story because that's the best way I can explain what birthing houses are like in Ukraine. They say they're free birthing houses, and so then women come when they're in labor, and everything has to be paid for. You have to pay for your personal, doctors, midwives, you pay them personally. And then every little thing, whether you use their bed, or you use a sheet, or if you do take some pain medicine, all those things you have to pay by yourself. And so it's often really, really expensive, and the care is super poor. Because this is just a nation of corruption. Again, there's just no sense of fairness or, I suppose, gentleness is how we might perceive it. Again, this is coming from an American perspective, so it seems incredibly harsh. And after reading some stories online and even just talking with Regina, it is unfair. It's horrible. And so I'm going to kind of walk through this article because I think it does a good job of keeping me organized, because my thoughts will kind of go everywhere. So, what's this called? Cytotec? It's a medicine that induces labor. And so that's, we use that here in America. We use medications a lot in our hospitals, but in Ukraine it's illegal. And so what they do is they smuggle it in from Russia. However, the mothers often don't know they're being given it. Doctors don't tell women what they're doing, they just do it. And so then again, that's another way that the women are then charged afterwards with a huge bill, and they have no idea why it's so much because they weren't told, they weren't asked, it's just given to them. And so this illegal substance is being put into their uteruses in the midst of childbirth, as well as just verbal abuse. That's what I'm going to call it. It's not uncommon for doctors to be impatient, to yell shut up, can you just hurry up, let's get this going, I have my kid has a school thing. So it's not this calming, soothing, relaxing, we're going to try and make this as easy for you as possible. It's get in and get out, I don't really want you here, but this is my job. So that's also unfortunate. There's a story here that I read. This article, it sounds like, I can't find information on this person personally, but the way it's written, it sounds very much like they've either lived in Ukraine or they have personal friends who have lived there. So anyways, they're telling the story of a woman. She was in labor and she was starting to push, but the doctor said, like, you can't start pushing until until you're crowning. And so because she was, they poured a bunch of cold water on her face. And it says here that the throwing of water on a birthing mother's face is quite common. And so it's just a very, like, aggressive, from our perspective, it's extremely abusive. And it's not a family-friendly atmosphere, so families aren't allowed to be there. Like, the spouse can't be there most of the time. And so this is, I don't want to say, like, this is all of them, but this is the majority of what birthing houses are like in Ukraine. And after spending some time there myself, I can definitely see how this is part of their culture. And so I'm really thankful that people like Regina, she specifically picked her career, specifically pursued her education so that she could go back to Ukraine and have a birthing house that was safe for women, that was fair, that did walk them through the process. Another thing that I found interesting, women in Ukraine aren't allowed to sit on the ground. And that's not because, like, oh, don't get your clothes dirty, we want to make sure you get the chair, like, be comfortable. The reason is because they think that if a woman sits on the ground, it freezes her eggs. And so there's this tremendous gap of sex education, of pregnancy education. Women truly don't know how they get pregnant. I actually had some encounters with some girls. They didn't know what a period was, even though they had them. Like, they didn't understand what was happening to their bodies. They just knew, well, I'm a girl, this is what happens. But they didn't realize that's part of their, like, sex organs. Like, that's part of like, recreation in our bodies. And so there's women who don't find out that they're pregnant until they feel the baby kick. And then they're terrified to death because they have no idea what's going on. They don't know how they got pregnant. And so it's just a very scary time for women. It's not something that they talk about. It's not something that they're educated on. It's kind of a shameful thing, unfortunately, because I like to think that many circles in the States, actually, I can't even say that, though, because it's only if you are a Christian who's been married, like, that's the picture. But anyways, that's a whole nother topic. This project and just this whole chapter has just made me reconsider how we treat pregnant women, whether they are young, whether they are old, whether they're married or they're single. It breaks my heart when a mother who wasn't expecting a child, who didn't want a child, is shamed. Or even a woman who did want a child, but didn't fit the social standards of our culture. And I'm learning that is a global issue. That's not just an American thing. But it does. It hurts my heart. It really hurts that when a child is being created, while God is in the midst of putting these knots together, tying all of these cells into a human being, when that's taking place, why is it our natural inclination to judge or to shame, unless they fit the perfect picture of what a pregnant woman should be? And I think that's really sad. So I would like to have more of these conversations. I think this is something we need to be talking about more. I know in our ministry classes, well, in some of my ministry classes, I'm a ministry major, and so we talk about what is our response when one of our teenagers in our youth group, when our 15-year-old girl comes and she's pregnant. Like, how do we handle that? And too many times I've witnessed churches just completely dismiss the girl. They shame her. They ask her, how could you? They expect her to repent. They expect her to call off the relationship, to do all of these things to make her pure again. And that's just not okay. That's not okay. That's not how Jesus treated the Samaritan woman. That's not how Jesus treated the bleeding woman. That's not how Jesus treated women, period. And so I just think we need to talk about this more. We need people to be advocates. We need more churches to be throwing baby showers. We need to be more excited about baby showers than maybe even weddings. Yeah. And I'm getting married, so I'm excited about that too. Anyways, those are just some of my thoughts and my experiences in Ukraine. I am thankful for Regina and just her influence, and also Sasha, her husband. Their relationship is just wonderful. It's been such an honor to meet them and befriend them. They travel a lot, so they come to the States and they visit us, and then my parents are actually going back to Ukraine this summer, so they'll get to see them and see their girls. I bet they're all grown up now. But anyways, thanks for listening to my thoughts and what I've learned. So have a good night. Thanks.